From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of the CyberHub Podcast Practitioner Brief. We are live, finally, in a stable environment, I guess. So we've got a packed show for us today, including Google patching a critical vulnerability in Chrome, CISA adding 14 more must-patch vulnerabilities to their list, Trickbot is back, a severe vulnerability in Kubernetes, a Solarwinds warning, what does that mean, and Ukraine pulls an arrest on a suspected cybercriminal assisting the Russians within Ukraine. All that on today's show. We're going to be talking about how that impacts the business. Some of it is more knowledge-based, but that's a lot to talk about today. So before we do that, and before we get into today's show, a big shout out to our friends over at KnowBe4 for their support of our program. Without their support, this show would not be possible. You can go to cyberhubpodcast.com, which you see right in front of you, and see all the latest and greatest in what's going on in the world of cybersecurity. And all of our latest shows as well, including today, being St. Patrick's Day. I'm still wearing black, but if you're wearing green, wonderful, exciting, green beer, green eggs. That's what today is all about. So before we do that, I don't have my ceremonial cup of coffee. Still where I'm at, I don't have my espresso machine set up yet. I will next time I'm here. So without further ado, coffee cup cheers, enjoy your morning beverage, and let's get into what's going on in the world of cybersecurity. So Google patches another critical vulnerability with the Chrome 99 update. The Chrome 99 update, which was released on Tuesday, patches a critical vulnerability discovered by one of the company's very own researchers. And that's the point of having researchers in your own company, folks. it actually worked. And the story makes it seem like, wow, a researcher in a company discovered something. Well, the critical flaw itself is CVE 2022-09-71. It's been described as a use after free issue affecting the Blink layout component. And Sergey Galazov of Google Project Zero was reported for the flaw, was credited for reporting the flaw, Google doesn't assign severity rating Chrome vulnerability. Over the past year, there's only been 4 of those in total. 2 of the 4 critical vulnerabilities were discovered by Mr. Sergey, so well done, sir, who's also identified many other bugs, some of which were patched last week. An update has been pushed to all Chrome devices to make sure you're updating your Chrome before proceeding with your day today. CISA adds an additional 14 vulnerabilities to their much patched list. How fun is that? So CISA on Tuesday announced that it's added 15 vulnerabilities to its known exploited vulnerabilities catalog. That makes now more than 500 security flaws that have been added to the must-patch list since November of 2021 when CISA first announced it, along with the binding operational directive 22-01, which requires federal agencies to take prompt action to address the identified issues. So I hope they've got some of that. The newly added flaws, which affect the SonicWall, Sonic OS, and 14 impacting Microsoft Windows, are all older issues, some of them having been patched for more than half a decade. I just want to point something out here. Who in the government is using SonicWall? Like, who? What agency in the federal government did this directive have to go to address? Like, I think if CISA is going to add this and it's going to put SonicWall, Sonic OS on there, just please let us know what agency of the government needs to be completely like revamped and restructured. Because why are we using SonicWall in the federal government? Just saying, SonicWall is what, grandma uses at her store or your local accountant or doctor uses in his office. It's not a firewall that should be on a federal government infrastructure. Just saying. You guys can call me out for it. If you disagree, that's okay. I'm okay with people disagreeing with me. I'm just probably stating the obvious. We all saw SonicWall on there and started shaking our heads and going, who did this? Before we do this, though, let's get to some shout-outs because I haven't done shout-outs really all week. Eddie, good morning. Where's Dallas, Texas? Because that's where I'm at, buddy. Nick, good morning. Ken, good morning. David B. and Miguel, buenos dias. How are you doing, brother? All right. So just some shout-outs. Oh, and how could I not let Mr. McQuiggan in on the loop? Mr. McQuiggan, it was only a short week ago that you crashed the show. Only a short week ago did you crash this very, very show in person. And today, you're not doing it. Very, very sad. A very sad day. All right. That's with this CISA update. So Trickbot malware is abusing MikroTik routers as proxies for command and control. So MikroTik routers now on the forefront of IoT devices that are being used by the Trickbot malware. So people have to understand the history of Trickbot. Trickbot started as a targeting financial institutions, targeting financial institution customers with the kind of goal of doing some financial fraud. A lot of financial fraud. In fact, 3-4 years ago, Trickbot was, I remember sitting with a bank executive who was a CISO at a bank saying, what are you guys doing for Trickbot? And he goes, I don't know what that is. And I was just like, well, that's the next big thing. Well, Trickbot's evolved a ton. And now it's become really a critical piece of malware. It's a critical piece of malware that not only goes after financial institutions, but it can also be used for DDoS attacks. It can also be used for data exfil and so much more. So the Microsoft Defender for IoT research team and Threat Intel Center talked about the MikroTik routers being used as proxy servers for the C2 servers and redirecting traffic through non-standard ports, which again goes to the fact if you've got devices, you've got to block and just allow several ports to go through. A lot of these security issues always come down to the basics. Are we blocking unusual ports? Are we only allowing some ports to go out? So we make it very easy. Trickbot, emerging in 2016, has evolved into a sophisticated, persistent threat. Man, 6 years. The expansion of Trickbot has come amid reports of an infrastructure going offline, but the infrastructure goes offline, comes back up, and now they're looking at IoT devices, realizing so many people probably have an Alexa or an Apple Pod or a Google Home or whatever one of those devices are, and a ton of other IoT devices, light bulbs, fridges, cameras, you name it. So if they can run off of that, just imagine. Port 449 is the hit port. Port 80 is what they're using to communicate. You should block those if you don't have a good business use case for them that'll help secure your organization. There's a severe vulnerability that's been patched in the CRI-O container engine for Kubernetes. The CRI's the lightweight container runtime for Kubernetes with support for OCI initiative compatible runtimes. To track the CV 2022-0811, a CVSS score of 8.8. The vulnerability exists due to the lack of proper validation for the kernel parameters passed to the pins utility. The issue was introduced in the CRI.O version 1.19 with syscontrol support was added to the container engine. It's referred as Create Escape. Love when companies come up with these names. The security hole could be exploited by an attacker to escape from a Kubernetes container, gain root access to the host, and be able to move anywhere in the cluster. Exploitation does require the right to deploy on a pod on a Kubernetes cluster that uses the CRI-O runtime. In addition to the malware execution, the security defect could also allow an attacker to perform other actions on the host, including data exfil and lateral movement across the pods. The flaw was resolved with the latest update 1.223. 1.2, 1.6, 1.20.7, and 1.19.6. Make sure you're doing these updates. Solarwinds has come up front and center here with a warning of attacks targeting the web help desk instances. So Solarwinds warning customers against attacks that are targeting internet exposed web help desk instances and advising removing them from publicly accessible infrastructure. The WHDs and enterprise help desk ticketing and IT inventory management software designed to help customers automate ticketing and IT asset management tasks. A SolarWinds customer reported an external attempted attack on their instance of Web Help Desk 12.7.5. The customer's endpoint, their EDR system blocked the attack and alerted the customer to the issue. In an abundance of caution, SolarWinds recommends all Web Help Desk customers whose WHD implementation is externally facing to remove it from the public infrastructure until they know more. At least they're warning about this and letting people know. So I guess SolarWinds is taking some good practice and moving forward with it. And finally, our last story of the day is the Ukraine Secret Service arrests a cyber criminal. Hacker News, you've got to know better. You've got to know better. Hackers are red teamers, blue teamers. This is a criminal helping Russian invaders, and you can see he is very, very cold. So the Security Service of Ukraine, the SBU, said it detained a criminal who offered technical assistance to the invading Russian troops by providing mobile communication services for the Russians inside the Ukrainian territory. The anonymous suspect is said to have been broadcasting text messages to Ukrainian officials, including security officer and civil servants, proposing that they surrender and take the side of Mother Russia. The individual has also been accused of routing phone calls from Russia to the mobile phones of Russian troops in the Ukraine. Up to 1,000 calls were made through this criminal in one day. Many of them are from the top leadership of the enemy army, according to the SBU. Besides implicating the criminal for helping Russia make anonymous phone calls to its military forces based in the Ukraine, the agency said the criminal passed commands and instructions to different groups of Russian invaders, and he will be held accountable for all the severity of the law, because on it is the blood of tens or even hundreds of killed Ukrainians, according to the bad translation there. In a separate incident, Reuters reported last week of a cyber attack that disrupted broadband satellite internet access in the Ukraine on February 24th between 5 and 9 a.m., around the time that Russia commenced its full-scale invasion of the country. So you see where that's going. Folks, that's it for our show today. We'll be back with more on Monday. Until then, have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your St. Patrick's Day, because, go have some green eggs, some beer. Enjoy it. We'll be back on Monday with more on this. Until then, have a great rest of your day and stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.